I'm doing, like this year I did content pieces that are similar to what like an official broadcast would do, but what I've learned over the last 2 years is a lot of people who watch the content are people who wouldn't watch if they weren't watching me. So a lot of like some of the feedback I got. So I started the idea of like, what if I went into a more official way of producing content for them, especially because I've realized, one, people don't watch a lot of domestic league. Like, you'd be surprised, and I mean, you're sure you can see it with World's viewership, but I don't know what the term is. I'll say normie, let's say, or like average watcher. I think there's like hundreds of thousands of people that just come out for Worlds, and that's it. Not MSI, just Worlds. They'll just come out for Worlds, and that's it. And that's kind of where I targeted my content. Just people who, because I know a lot of people who watch the content on the daily, they probably know a lot about the domestic scene. I thought I'd just make a few videos that were more like official for those viewers and for the ones who kind of just don't watch the broadcast at all. So yeah, I feels weird to do like more official stuff, but I think it went well.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely like understand that. I mean, I feel like that is part of the whole situation that we're in. I mean, even this show is just like a supplement for, you know, something that needs to be in esports, like in order to show more player faces and stuff like this. Obviously, for your episode, it's different because everyone knows who you are. But like for some of the lesser players, it feels like if they don't have these types of opportunities to come on shows like this, it changes like narratives a lot. And I think that's a huge thing that Yamato and I do, is just fighting against like common narratives, like the ones that we just like really hate. Like the Knight and Chovy are chokers. They're not gonna do anything in this world. Where I'm like, they're fucking good guys. Like they're gonna like, they'll probably win eventually. Like these guys are fucking really insane. Like, so I think for like trying to be in the space, it is kind of like a weird angle, because you do want to like create the content that is missing within the scene, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know if that's stepping on Rise's toes. I don't know if they see the video that you released and they're like, oh, like what the fuck, like why are we gonna release a video then? Or they feel like you're, you know, like taking away from something. I think what it should show them is that these things won't cost insane amounts of money to get people like what they want. Like you can do a good fucking video with like a couple video editors and just really make sure that you're putting the money in the right spots and you're actually like having the right type of idea with things.
What a game. What a game of rugby league.
A win for the ages. It's just the greatest game.
Spring's a great time to get that paint project done.
Wattle 4-litre exterior paint, $94.90. Cabot decking oil, $99.20.
Where you find a competitor's lower price on the same stocked item, we'll beat it by 10%. Lowest prices are just the beginning.
But yeah, I mean, I think that is an interesting topic, something I wanted to bring up, and I think this is a good time for it in the episode, is just like fighting narratives as a co-streamer, because I know like we do it a lot on the co-stream and or the co-streams that we do, and I know that like a lot of times I can see from how you talk about players that some of them just get really tiring. It feels like narratives are kind of outdated when it comes to a lot of players, or they hang back by like a year or two. When it comes to teams, players, things like this. Like, how do you feel as a co-streamer when it comes to like trying to kind of like be more accurate and like shape the perception of the community around whatever topics that end up being like hot?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because like when I first became a caster, right, one of the main pieces of feedback I got from a lot of pro players was like, thank you for being a caster, because you see a pro player's perspective, and all of the narratives that look like they're doing something really stupid, I would be able to spot the fact they're not doing something stupid. They're just trying their best out of a bad situation, and it's not actually a bad play, you know, they're doing the right thing, it just looks really bad. Like whether it's, you know, flashing into a wall, you can kind of see where they're trying to flash and they're trying to pull off something really difficult. And so I always, as a caster, try to shape narratives differently and away from gameplay, especially from people being able to judge people from like silly plays. And I think that's like resonating in the co-streams as well. But I do feel like I fight a lot of narratives when it comes to the whataboutism style, you know. And it's like, well, you can say Knight and Chovy are what's a good example? I can't think of a good example, but people will always use history, or they'll use non-factors to argue against you. Like someone could have the best bit of their life, but because they did this here at this time, they're not going to perform well, you know. Like I'm sure when we get to Worlds, the Tarzan series will live rent-free in everyone's head last year. And as much as I agree, like he kind of choked that series and his finals wasn't the best, using the basis that he was choking last year's Worlds, or Peanut was choking last year's Worlds, that he's going to play bad this year, it's such like a baseless argument. And but you can't argue against it. You know, I can give you all these reasons why Peanut's a good player and why he outjungled everyone in playoffs. And Timmy can just say, well, he choked last year's Worlds. And I can say, well, you're right, but he's really good and he's probably going to play really good. And the second he chokes one more time, if it doubles down once and the same thing happens and their argument comes true and then he makes a mistake, just one flash into a wall and they lose, your whole argument is he's choking. That's it. Like, Peanut does one rel flash engage and that discounts his entire series. It doesn't matter how well he played in any of the games, he's a choker. And so narratives can be formed from people's like perception of one singular play, and they'll ignore every factor around it. And even through lots of time and years and effort and struggles that the player goes through, if they do that one same thing again, it's just over, one play. And it works in positive ways as well, right? Zeka had like an insane Worlds 2022. Last year he was okay, he was like pretty mid, but this split he's had like one of the best splits of his life. And if he goes to Worlds 24 this year and plays insanely well, then I think the positive side will, because he smurfed Worlds 22 and carried a lot, and maybe smurfs Worlds 24, let's say he doesn't win, he comes top 4, the debate will be like, is Zeka one of the best mid laners in history? And it's like, I can see where you're coming from, you know, and I agree that there's like a lot of good things around this player, and there's a lot of like singular moments you can point to. And the fact this happened again is great, but I feel like narratives can be formed on such small things, and they can be taken to such extremities very easily. And so fighting that battle with context is very difficult, because people ignore context and just say, but what about that? And it's like...
Yeah, I mean...
I think that's the frustrating battle, right?
When I was talking about Hanwha Life yesterday on stream, like, it felt like the way that people were talking about the team, or like the general perception is like, well, Doran and Peanut are chokers, but Zeka is good internationally. So does that like cancel out, like, how good is the team going to be based off this? It's like,
bro, that's like me when I like order a fat fucking pepperoni pizza and I drink with a green tea and I'm like, well, it's a 1-for-1, you know, like I'm drinking green tea and I'm eating a pizza. Like, it actually is not that unhealthy. That's exactly what that is.
I mean, I can see it. Actually, when you put it like that, I mean, that's actually some good co-fights. You know, maybe they're onto something here. Like, maybe they know what's going on. I mean, Yamato was doing that the whole time he was in Texas. Bro, if you saw like the way this guy like was able to eat food, and then he would be like, yeah, you know, but it's fine. You know, we went for a walk. And it
Cancel it out. That's me, bro. I'll eat something really salty and just drink water and be like, that cancels it out, right? And someone's like, well, not really.
And then you get a kidney stone at 32 and you piss out a rock. But, you know, I don't know. I'm not speaking from personal experience, obviously. I'm just saying that could happen in the future. And if it does, it fucking hurts, by the way. But, Yamato, I thought you dive in.
No, on the fucking narrative theme, like, I agree with the notion that's like, there's like certain moments that are so more digestible for people that consume the entertainment product in like a stupid way. It's like, if, for example, when I always make this example, it's like when I watch Formula One, I'm so dumb. I don't know shit. I'm like laughing at the memes. I'm eating up like I'm watching Drive to Survive. I don't know shit, bro. Like, it's like probably like probably like for the Formula One like buffs, they're like, this is the lowest form of like Formula One. This doesn't mean shit, bro. I'm sitting there like enjoying the drama. I'm so dumb. And I think for the majority of people that like consume things, they want to like grab onto something that they understand. It's like, this guy died here in a way that sometimes I die, so he must be really bad, and I'm gonna hold on to that for their life because that's like digestible. Like there's some narratives. I remember like there was this post that we like. I was sitting with Dom, and there was this post in your rat community because it's flourishing, it's good.
Oh.
And I was like, who is the best player of the 2020s? And the majority
Did you see the post,
of people.
Pedro?
I don't remember
See
that
that
post,
one?
though. I don't
Okay.
check it off stream. Maybe if I saw it on stream, then yeah.
Okay. So
Go
keep on
ahead.
going, Yamato. No, I was gonna say
say-
we have to ask him though who he thinks the best player of the 2020s
Oh yeah, let's
was.
start there. Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
Who I
Okay,
think
so
the best
before
player of 2020s is?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
2020. So 2010s easily Faker. 2020s, who's
Yeah.
the best player of the 2020s? It's hard to do it on the spot, but I feel like you'll just,
Kobe, I guess, but I'm not sure.
that's same line of reasoning we all had. So you're right there with us, Cage. We're sitting there, we're like, yeah, like Chovy has been fucking insane. I mean, Knight's been fucking insane. Like, these players are crazy good if you consider like their whole bodies of work. The name that was
I think
coming up the
Showmaker is
most.
maybe there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Showmaker had really insane like first couple years, and then kind of fell off in the latter couple. But that's where our minds are. And then the name that we saw was just Beryl. Like everyone was like, Beryl is the fucking best player of the 2020s. And the whole time Yamato was here, when we were watching the like KT series, for example, we said, hey, let's pretend that Beryl was actually held to this standard. People legitimately believe that Beryl was like the best player in the 2020s. How fucking more critical would they be? Like Chovy breathes wrong, and people are like, Choker, you fucking suck. Like fuck you, Choker.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
But like if Beryl like ints like 4 games, it's like Giga Chad Beryl. Look at him on Rel. He's coming into the team. Flat holes, like misses everyone, griefs the entire thing, and people just sit there, they're like,
BRX last year was.
yeah, he just ran it down like so hard, and people are just like, yeah, but I mean, like, what can you do, bro? Like, he's a Giga Chad, like, he's the shot caller, you know, 2 world championships. And then how do you argue against it, man? Like, somebody says, like, 2 world championships, like, what do you got, fucking bum ass Dom? And I'm like, all right, I mean, I guess you got a point. I mean, Beryl is the fucking, maybe he's just the GOAT.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny, guys, because like that's what you're fighting against, right? You always have the but what about this, but what about that, like argument, and people will always find one. If they're convinced that this player is bad, they will always find one way to paint them badly, right? No matter how many times you disprove a positive, a negative from them with a positive, they'll always find one thing, whether it's choke, whether it's accolades, international success, like skill level compared to others. But this player is better or was better, they'll always find ways to discount it. So that's just the problem. When someone has like their mind made up that this player is insanely good or insanely bad, they will always find a positive or negative to like defend the argument. And so you kind of end up chasing your own tail at that point with, trying to disprove the fact that these are the way it is. And I feel like what I've learned is it just becomes you're screaming into like an empty room at the end of it. Like you're just kind of screaming to yourself, because no matter how many times you try and phrase it differently or paint a player in a different light, it's only until something like a narrative breaker happens, Like, for example, if Hamalife win Worlds, I think, and Doran plays well, that will probably break the Doran Choker narrative, right? I would hope. I think something drastic has to happen for that narrative to break. Like the Chovy choking title probably will end if he wins Worlds, I hope, So I think there's not much you can do to argue against these people when they've had their mind made up. I don't think you can sit there and have a talk with them for an hour, every single one of them, to convince them. So.
Oh, I try. I try. I just fight like my Twitch chat. I just turn on my stream. I fight my Twitch chat for like 8 hours a day, and then I just turn it off. And I just like, the fuck did I just do with my time? Why? And then your credibility
will get questioned if you're fighting the other side of the argument and the player does something else, right? If your fight, like I was fighting very hard at like last year, I put Doran very highly and I rate him really highly, and I said, this guy's so good. Like, don't sleep on him coming to Worlds. He's really talented. He's like, and then I promise this is the year of Doran. That Gen G BLG series happened, my whole opinion is discounted, and that's why I said if Doran comes into MSI this year and completely chokes it again, I will never rate him above top 5 for the rest of my life, no matter what he does, because I argue and defend the player so hardly because I thought the narrative was really bad around Doran coming into Worlds already, and then that happened and it doubled down, and no matter what I say now, it's like unfightable, right? So
yeah, true.
Today's episode is brought to you by Turtle Beach. I have to say, their headset, we got the Generation 3 600 Stealth, which is, usually with wireless headsets, they are wireless to a certain degree, and then you have to charge them, and it messes you up, and then they give you these short cables, and then you're like playing like this, sideways. The beauty of these ones is, like I've been using them now, is that you have 80 hours of battery life. 80 hours of battery life is completely mental. The battery life has really, really carried me. And I am I do animations, when I die in League, I like do this shit, and if it wasn't wireless, it would mess me up completely. I also have a big ass head, so it's very important that it fits comfortably for me. Dom also has a big ass head. Tell me, Dom, what has been your experience with the Turtle Beach headphones?
I mean, the best thing, like you just said, has been the comfort for me, because when I stream for long periods of time, I'm not somebody who does earbuds. I'm not somebody who does speakers without a headset. I always have a headset on. So the number one thing is that when I'm streaming for long hours, if I'm going to be doing a Worlds co-stream or I'm going to be doing a long LPL stream, that at the end of the day, when I take off my headphones, my head doesn't hurt. And these are just comfortable headphones. I feel like the fact that it is wireless, it does feel light on the head. It has good cushioning on the sides. And that's what I care about. I want to hear good quality audio, and I want it to just be comfortable. Turtle Beach delivers on both, so I'm very happy with the headset.
At Turtle Beach, they have more stuff than just headsets. They have all the gaming gear options that you need, all the accessories. The headsets are the specific top objects that we've been using. But nevertheless, of course, we have a code for you guys. Get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. For limited time only, head to turtlebeach.com and use code TSD for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code TSD. That is TURTLEBEACH.com with promo code TSD. Use it now and do your ears and your head a favor and keep yourself light and crispy.
I'm coming in fast. First place, you coming in last. I'm hitting that gas. I'm hitting that loud. Got motion. We causing up commotion. I put it in motion.
No time for hay fever? Choose Zyrtec. Seize the day with Zyrtec. No hay fever tablet works faster.
Is there any time where you guys like went too far? Like I have this example of like for the longest time I'm like defending like Broken Blade because whenever it was always the same conversation around LEC was, oh, this player is doing bad, replace him with Kazi. Like whatever AD it is, they should get Kazi. And then for top player it was always they should get Irrelevant. And I'm like, I think Irrelevant is good. But I fought back against that to the point where I'm like, shit, am I just flaming Irrelevant? Just because I'm fighting the narrative? Have you guys ever caught yourself in this motion where like you are pushing against something so hard that you almost end up on the other side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm having this right now personally with Faker. It's like I have this thing coined like the Faker trade where it's just, at level 2 he'll just take some like horrible trade where he just has to base and buy refillable, or he'll just die and I'll just be like, oh, this is like the Faker trade. This is like when he just like Greaves is late. And I'm trying to point out that like everyone thinks Faker's the GOAT, right? Like anyone who like really is being honest has Faker as the greatest player of all time. And I also believe Faker is the GOAT. And I think he was like good in spring. Like but to be honest about like his level of gameplay right now, it's hard for me to put him above many of the other LCK players. I have him as one of the lowest rated LCK players coming into the tournament. And it feels like when you're trying to fight against a narrative, it's like you become so critical of their gameplay that it's like you're being overly critical. It's like, are you even being fair at that point? I feel like that's one of the ones that I struggle with because obviously Faker is the most popular player, and then like I have the beef with T1 fans, right? So like people are always just ready for me to have like, I think I had like Faker in the mid 40s in my top 70 when it came to like players of the world. So you know, like I'm always like, you know, just pissing them off. But that's one where I feel like I am definitely on the other side, where I'm just like, I don't know. It's just very hard for me to accept when a player is viewed that much differently. Like, for example, Zika is so fucking good. Like, we all watch Zika. This guy is so fucking good in LCK. But, like, people just have, like, a weird perception of him. I feel like the narrative hasn't caught up. Like, for example, I had him a top 5 player coming into Worlds, and I don't think that's a very extreme take. I think that that's fair. I think you could even make the argument that, like, if you really count playoffs hard, I think you could make the argument he was better than Chovy in that in throughout the playoffs. So I think that there are a lot of things to move, but it feels like when the narrative hasn't caught up, you just look like you're fucking psycho. Like I just look like I am just mentally ill, which obviously I'm not. So that's my piece. That's my 2 cents. Like, I'm just throwing that in there.
Yeah, a lot of people miss like for example, a lot of people, and this will be true when Zika gets to Worlds, will be like, oh, pick Akali. Why is he playing Akali? Or Sylas, why is he playing Sylas? And there'll be like 2 things. They'll be oblivious to the meta, right? Because they haven't been watching League or they don't care about the patch. And they haven't watched Zeka since Worlds 2022 because that was the last time they properly saw him pop off, right? So when like I would say like quite a handful of viewers rock up to World, they will expect that from Zeka, right? And so it's quite difficult to, I think there's a lot of people who consume like loads of League content, who I think a lot of us make probably daily videos for as they watch. But when it comes to the internationals, a lot of people do look up for content that simplifies the idea of what's actually happening, right? And what the players look like and what their form's like. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see the narratives going into Worlds. But I mean, I think all of us watch the most League of Legends combined of anyone right now in the world when it comes to major regions. So I'm sure we've got like our own opinions based on players, right? And we Not that we spread our own narratives, but we have our own opinions that people might take and run with. And sometimes I have this issue where someone's like, oh, but you said this about this player. And I'm like, did I say that? Or are you just saying that to make me think that I said that? And now you want me to believe that I said that? And that happens to me. I don't know if you guys ever get that, but like every now and then someone like, yeah, kind of gaslit by viewers to believe that you said a narrative from like 6 months ago. And you're like, what the fuck? Did I say that? And then I just like go a bit crazy sometimes. That's it.
What? Yeah, no. I mean, we've had this problem before. Kidwell and I have talked about this like off stream, where you watch so many games that they all like blend together, and then you like people start asking about like a game from a series that was important that happened like 3 days ago, and you're like, the fuck happened in this game? Like, did I watch this shit? Like, what the hell even happened? And then you have to get a couple clues. You have to like see draft or something. You're like, oh, this is the game where like Doran played Camille and like completely ran it down or something. Like you need these context clues to like really just clue you into exactly what you watch. Yeah, because yeah, exactly, because you just all the games just become one. It's like you've watched too many fucking games, and it's like you get an overall idea of the landscape and how teams play and stuff, but it's very hard to pick out like the specifics.
Now that we have the trident of most watched league, is there some narrative we want to kill together here? Is there something that comes to mind?
Oh damn, we're like the council.
Oh,
we are the
okay.
Council is in session.
Ooh.
What is the narrative we want to
It's a
kill?
meeting.
The rat sack, the rat down.
The rat down.
What's the most frustrating narrative that I see? What is the most frustrating narrative?
You guys need to help me out, because I get obsessed by like the smallest things, and they bother
I think
me.
what I've noticed is a lot of people get upset. And I think maybe a lot of people watching this from as a Western audience, a lot of people get upset why G2 is always rated top 8 in world tier lists. That's like a narrative that a lot of people seem to be like quite leaves a kind of sour taste in people's mouth, because I mean, I put G2 in my top 8 from last year's tier lists and they bombed. I put them again in my top 8 this year, and people kind of question like, but Team Liquid's on a rise, you know, why aren't they above? Why is G2 always this one team? And I was doing this yesterday on my tier list, and I was saying things like, I found it hard to decide which Western team to put in top 8 between Team Liquid and G2. So the way I view it personally is I imagined a simulation of G2 versus Team Liquid, and that was the way I would decide the factors, right? And a couple of factors came to my mind as like gameplay analytical reasons as to, you know, I think Caps is just such a unique player that he can turn the tide in international best of 5, and his side laning in the finals was a detriment, and I think is a huge powerful factor that a team like Team Liquid struggle against. Their mid to late game macro is like really high up there, and the narrative of G2's early games being bad is as much as it's true, their mid to late game is extremely strong. And I think Team Liquid got a lot of benefits in their early game from being extremely smart around the map, and you know, having their bot lane base at like 4 or 5 minutes and swapping and kind of like changing up the map and mismatching and stuff like that. And I use a lot of these analytical arguments, but everyone will always come back and be like, but the Western teams suck. Why is there a Western team in the top 8? And you know, it's like NRG made it out of groups.
I mean, there's normally a Western team in the top 8.
Exactly.
It's
statistically,
very
it's
rare.
like statistically, it's crazy to not get a Western team in the top 8 because of how much region kill you get in Swiss stage. Like there is like a 50-something% chance that there'll be a Western team in the top 8. It's just a case of who gets the better draw and who you think's the strongest. So I think there always has to be a Western team, which is like killing. I think that should kill a lot of the narrative. Statistically, you should probably always put a Western team in your top 8 no matter what. And in skill level wise, I do believe G2 is up there, and I think they're better than Team Liquid. So.
I definitely agree with the. So I also like rate G2 higher than they should be based on how they played. And the reason for this is because when you look at a team that has that high of a ceiling, you feel like that is what really matters at Worlds. Like normally, if you think about how Worlds goes, it's not teams that have like very consistent level that win Worlds. It hasn't been since I guess like 2020 Damwon that we've had just like a giga favorite go in and then just like look like the best team and just win the tournament. It never goes like that. Like we have the T1 win. I mean, we even had like the FPX win where they started really shaky in groups. Like it's like the team that has the ability to peak. And the thing about G2 that I personally like, and the reason why I rate them highly and I had them like over Damwon and teams like this, is I feel like
really good off.
When you have good mid to late game, that is normally like the hardest part of the game to like actually get better at. But I don't think that it's hard to find ways to like bandage the early game, and that's kind of what G2 did domestically. Like when they just did those perma swaps starting at like 5 minutes, they would find timers to swap their bot lane top, and they would just essentially continue swapping lanes over and over again and getting like, and they would just catch up in games by doing this. So there are ways you can band-aid your early game, and I don't think that it's that easy to execute, like to stop teams internationally the same way you do domestically. When everyone's nervous, like when people are playing safer, I do think that internationally, early game, like being super early game focused is not normally the key to overall success. And then also, I think the G2 players have proven that they can play early game before. Like it hasn't been that these players are just dog shit in lane and they get stomped by everyone and they're not going to have a chance internationally. It's like they were just playing bad in lane for, you know, I guess a couple months, but also the team in general was playing bad. And when players have stuck together for a long period of time, I think you do have like that hope that they can figure things out. Also, I mean, MSI was not that long ago. They played top 4 there, so I can 100% see the G2 point, and I'm also like with you on that idea that there's going to be a Western team that comes out, whether it's TL, G2, maybe even like FlyQuest makes a run. If you look at how Swiss ends up working, it's like I think last year there was something where it was like 66% chance that a Eastern team doesn't make it out, just based on how Swiss works, because of like all the different iterations, like all the different possibilities. There's just a lot of times that when you start drawing, you get a shitty draw for a couple of the teams. Like some teams got blessed draws, like Weibo last year, giga fraudulent, like the way that they ended up making it out of Swiss stage. No one thought they were good enough. They drew pretty much only Western teams. Energy in the corners, like it was pathetic, you know. And like, but they just got that draw. And then other teams like KT, they got these draws that were super hard. Only Asian teams. Like, how is that fair? I mean, it's just the luck of the draw, bro. That's how Swiss stage works.
Yeah, BLG was a free win. Bin was an easy sun there for the crowd.
Don't you disrespect my goat like that.
Best top coming into World 24, fathered by the shy 1-0.
Oh, shit.
Historical narrative.
Let me drop my G2. I want to add my G2 sprinkles before we jump to sucking off bin, because I will do that on my free time all day.
Again, hell
day.
Yeah. Tag team that.
G2, I think the main thing is like I mentioned, I think Mickey is top 5 support at the World Championship. And it's like, but Mickey was inting the whole split. But Mickey showed me enough that, like, when I look at the games of like the regional finals, I see that he's in tune with the ideas that I care about in terms of being first on the map, being in tune with everything that is going on. And for a player like Mickey, that is enough. It's like Mickey has such a large fucking tenure in terms of like the credit that he has as a player, that I know that when it comes to an international event, if he has 3 weeks to like iron sharp fucking focus on something, you know he's going to fucking deliver. And it's the same thing for Caps. It's like I rate G2 super fucking high because I think mid and support are like the most important roles in the game right now. Together with jungle, I think jungle support is arguable, but I think support I put up there because you just have so much more agency and free time because junglers actually need to clear camps. And through that, I'm putting G2. I put G2 7th, and I was arguing with myself: should I put G2 above T1, Weibo, Top Esports? Because these teams are weird as fuck too. Like these teams can be the best and they can be the worst at the same time. Like these are some weird ass fucking teams, which could maybe be our next topic of conversation. But just with some players, you give them the benefit of the doubt, even if they play bad for a split, and then toughen up when it actually like matters. Until it gets to the point where Mickey and Caps have like run it down for like 2 years straight, I'm going to believe in these players because in my mind, like these are probably the 2 best players that Europe have like ever produced in terms of like just quality and being able to like compete internationally. Like the main question, right, the main concern is like how well is Yike going to do, because that's like the main question for me. But I think that in regards to everything else, I think G2, I think macro-wise, they can compete with the best. I think in terms of champion spread, the preparation, like they play fucking everything. Like Caps, maybe his Yone looks bad, but every mid laner has like their own kind of quirk, you know, in terms of what they like to play. It's like Zeka prefers like the Yone and the Akali matchups. Maybe seeing Zeka play Syndra feels weird. I mean, you have Showmaker not wanting to play. I can see him play Syndra, whatever. Like everyone has their quirks. While Caps is he has a kind of a wide spread in terms of what he plays. And I think like prep-wise, they are super good. But then the main thing that concerns me is just how do they wrap up the early game and how do they make their lane phase like consistent. But that's something that Dom, you mentioned as well when I was over there. You said this is the easiest thing to practice, and I agree. Like when you scrim the first 10 minutes of the game, like that is something that you like. You get volume on that. You don't get to practice too much of the macro aspects because you require 10 people to tango, and often in scrims 10 people don't want to tango. Like you have one guy just being a brute.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I also think like flexibility-wise, G2 has always shown like they've got something prepared. Worst case, they're gonna bust something out, whether it's a champion or a map rotation or some kind of play that's unique to their style. And I also think like this year, they had a pretty decent year, you know? I mean, you can say the almost BT1, even discounting that, the top esports win was actually pretty massive, I think, for G2 believers, you know? Whereas Team Liquid's just been kind of fathering Fnatic. But what I will say, like, as a final thing is, I don't know if I don't want to put words in your guys' mouth, but I just want people to realize that we don't say that teams are good and bad out of too much. We obviously use analytical reasoning, right? And we give our opinion on what our feeling of the teams coming into the internationals are based on what we've watched all year. But the reason we do this is because we are here to tell the story of the team. And if we don't tell it honestly, we do a disjustice to that team. As an example, we think G2 is a good team and should make top 8. If they don't make top 8, that shouldn't be an expectation, that should be a disappointment. Similarly, we say that a team like T1 looks bad coming into international. If they win Worlds, that should tell the story of their growth throughout that tournament, right? Because they didn't come in as a strong team. And if we come into these tier lists and we come into these opinions and say, yeah, T1's probably going to win again anyway, the expectation is just so shifted out of what actually should be happening. Gen G and BLG should be in the finals this year, this Worlds. If they don't make it, that's a disappointment. If BLG gets knocked out in Swiss stage, that is pathetic. And that should be the story that's told. And that's the reason we give these opinions, is because we give the bar of the teams, and whether they go above or below that bar, that's their story, right? And I think that's the most important thing that people fail to realize.
Yeah, and I think that also people struggle with like understanding when you're like joking and like when you're being sarcastic. For example, last year with Weibo, and you're like, oh, Weibo are the GOATs. Like, obviously anyone who watches your stream will know that like you actually think Weibo is like kind of dog shit coming into Worlds. Like,
yeah, they were terrible.
Yeah, they're fucking terrible. Like, everyone knows they're terrible. Like, when I'm like, OMG, my boys, it's like the reason why I like that team is because they're just so fucking dumb about certain concepts. Like, they're so ignorant about concepts in the game where it's like a miracle that they can ever even fucking win, you know? Like,
and that's the beauty of it, right? That's the beauty. Yeah. It's so frustratingly bad that it somehow turned out good, and that's like the beauty and the magic of World 22, right? DRX won Worlds. If the story wasn't told that they were dog shit coming into that tournament and 6th place regular season fucking riders, then you would say like, oh, the LCK won Worlds again. Like, there's no hype around this. But I think the stories start off with the first chapter, and we're here to give the first chapter, you know? And then the narrative just takes over. And those narratives shouldn't be taken in different directions based on random opinions and like, you know, history and stuff and arguments that are just not valid to their like current form.
Yeah,
bro,
for sure.
Found it. You guys found it. This is the #1 narrative that frustrates us the most when it gets rewritten. When shit gets rewritten. It's like, Yamaro, DRX run was not a fluke. I was like, do you even know what a fluke means? Yeah, but they beat all these good teams. Yeah, but they were good. Underdog. They were underdog the entire time. Like, well, they fucking what went down for shit to happen, or even like the T1 run. It's like the T1 run last year was insanely impressive because I didn't think it looked. They didn't look, but they got smashed by Gen G. They look completely lost in the melee meta, and then they just fucking. They almost lost to Team Liquid. You guys remember how Pioshik was fucking kicking them in the head?
The Lee Sin, bro. Pioshik Lee Sin was moving out there, bro. They took him back to LCK just because of that game. They saw it. They're like, oh, man, you're still pretty Korean. All right, come back, bro. Like, let's try to make another miracle run.
Yeah, and like there's more stories. Like, for example, PSG, right? Let's say PSG made a top 8 run when everyone kind of like thinks they're mid. You like look at their year as a growth. You know, there was a period in time that I completely forget that they almost beat BLG in a best of 5. Like they were 2-3 down against BLG and MSI, which is like unfathomable to like discredit the fact that they actually did that. Are we all crazy here? Like, this is the second best, perhaps maybe even first best team in the world, and 4 months ago PSG almost 5 gamed them. Like, that is crazy to think about.
Yeah, no, it's super crazy to think about. I remember that series just because that was probably my least favorite series that I've streamed the entire year. Like, that was the moment where I just hated streaming the most, was that BLG PSG series, because the whole time, like, all the narratives that are being thrown at me is like, look at how fucking bad the LPL is. Like, this is the #1 seed. Think about how bad the other teams are. Like, if PSG is the best team in LPL, then that means that like the other teams in PCS are also better than like all the LPL. It's like people just go so like extreme. Like they see what's happening and they extrapolate. Like the fact that PSG is just like, BLG looks stiff in that series. They look like kind of nervous. Like throughout the tournament, they loosened up. When they played against T1, they played better. When they played against Gen G, it just looked to me like Gen G was just a better team than BLG. I don't think BLG was like playing as a worse version of themselves. But those series are always super frustrating because it's like you can't. I feel like as a co-streamer, it's hard for me to like fully enjoy the series because I'm also trying to like always like contextualize what it means, and I feel like people's reaction to it is so opposite of what the reaction should be, which is like, look at this upset that's happening. This is fucking crazy. Like this is really exciting. Like this could be one of the most unlikely like circumstances that we've had. What happens if BLG goes lower bracket? But instead, it's like it's always, look at how fucking horrible this whole region is. And a lot of times, like, there's just regions that I like. For example, I think the LPL is the region I struggle with this the most on. Is like, it feels like so many people just want the LPL to be fucking horrible. Like, so then whenever like they underperform, it feels like I'm always fighting against that narrative. When Yamato was talking about the narratives, like what narrative would I want to combat the most? I think the one that I still see that I think is the most outdated and the one that I would like to combat the most, it's definitely the LPL is just a bunch of stupid players that have zero macro, that only fight to the death all the time, where it's like, yeah, I mean, like maybe bad tier LPL teams are like that, or like lower mid tier LPL teams have that aspect. But if you look at like the top teams that have came out of China for years, like the best team from China has good macro. Like they have fucking good macro. Like maybe not on the same level as Gen G, but it is definitely good fucking macro. Like BLG has good macro. JDG last year had good macro. I feel like the idea that LPL is just only fighting and it's just really like dumb gameplay and low quality as a result, I feel like that's the #1 narrative that I just hate from watching so much LPL.
I think, bro, something that I wanted to ask you both, because I have this theory, right? I call it the bell curve theory. Maybe I stole it from somewhere, but I always explain it when it comes to
Yamato's theory.
It's fandom sizes. When they get to very, very large sizes, I accept that there's going to be, let's say, a level of craziness. There's like this bell curve means that like basically there's going to be people that dislike the team to certain degrees and then like the team to certain degrees. With big fan bases on the extremes, there's going to be the people that hate them to the point where if you don't hate them enough, you suck too and you're the enemy. Or if you don't like them enough, it's like if you are not fellatiouing the players on cooldown, then you are not one of us, right?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you both in terms of like how, like with your size, how you deal with these fan bases. Like I think the ones that stand out, the KC fan base, right? There's moments where it can be irrational. There's moments where it can be extreme. T1 fan base. There's like all these fan bases that just have like these immense sizes. Have those extremes. How do you guys deal with this? How do you rationalize it? I think it's generally like a good thing, but I'm curious to hear you guys' like opinion, because I accept that craziness is a part of like the size overall.
Well, I'll go first and just say that like as much as I notice that there's these two extremities of things, there's also the people outside that like either support or hate these extremities in a sense. So like if someone has an extreme take on a team, people will immediately jump on the fact that they have an extreme take and they'll want to see them fail. So I see a lot of like the extremity takes and also the people around them that are like trying to shit on them for the extremity take, which is quite a difficult thing to manage. I don't know, the most places I see it is just like on the social medias or like the Twitch chat, right, or on the channels like that. I think when I first started out being a caster and a streamer, as a person, I'm quite like a shy, reserved person, and I don't like getting into too many arguments, so I didn't try and piss anyone off, right? But as time has gone on, like especially this year, I've started to get like a lot less of a temper with these people, because they are, I feel like when it comes to extreme opinions on teams and like diehard fans, I don't have a problem if you're a diehard fan, but the second you start making it personal and telling like people to fucking neck themselves because they don't agree with your opinion, it's where I like just kind of, I'm fed up with it. Normally I could just ignore that kind of stuff, but sometimes I either have to call it out or like ban or like tweet something degenerate about them. But I I think I have like a big enough audience where there's a lot of these extremists, especially when certain teams play, right? I normally just try to ignore it and have like pretty strict rules around what's right and wrong, you know? Like, can we just act like fucking humans here? So when people are being extremely degenerate, I just try my best to remove or ignore and not kind of interact with it, because I feel like the second you interact with it, what I've learned, is where you also become a target. The second you interact with either side, you're a target, you know? Whether you join the extremity side of being like, yes, I love them, everyone's gonna be like, bro, what the fuck? Like, you're not supposed to be like this biased. Why are you being such like a weirdo about it? And if you interact with the people who are extremely toxic and you tell them to like shut the fuck up, then the absolute gang comes, you know, and the army arrives, and now you start a fucking war. I'm sure Dom can tell you all about those wars. Like, for example,
clip on the Discord, and then all of a sudden come out like the same names.
Yeah, like
that's exactly how I picture them moving about it. They just like settle out, bro.
Bro, I had this with K-pop this year, right? Like, I every other weekend or week, I would get like added or commented at or mentioned, or like people in the scene would get it and they'd like talk to me about it, being like, bro, this is so annoying. All these K-pop fans just keep like bringing up random shit or like attacking me for no reason or bringing me into random things. Like, there's this one comment that's like kind of clipped out of context, or maybe they did say it and they didn't mean it in a bad way, right? They're just being critical. And so I just kind of snapped, you know. I was like, bro, this is just so infuriating. And the way I phrased it was like, obviously it was doing Faker, right? And the way I phrased it was, I think that you don't really have a right to boo Faker because he's coming to your event to play in a show match against you. If this was Worlds quarterfinals and, you know, you were up one game and it was like intense and competitive and you're on the same level, I think that's when I don't give a fuck about things like booing and cheering. And, you know, it's CS events, it's a very big thing, but this is like a for fun show match, you know, like what is the basis to